Today, we will have the final vote, of course, on the budget. And I think it will allow Democrats to say with unanimity that this is a wrong-headed, absolutely short-sighted approach to long-term fiscal policy. It's wrong in all of the ways that we have attempted to point out over the course of the last 4 days. I'm extremely pleased with the unity with which Democrats have been able to demonstrate our conviction about a number of issues relating to the budget. We pointed out how badly flawed the Medicare cuts were. We pointed out how extraordinarily short-sighted the cuts in education were. We pointed out each and every one of the flaws, and we've done so in as constructive a way as we can. And so we come to a point today where it is clear that the Republicans ought to have plenty of opportunities to give pause to what it is we're doing this afternoon. I think the traditional Republican constituencies will have plenty of reason to party this afternoon, because if you're a fat cat, if you're one of the elite in this country, if you're one of the wealthy, you are virtually guaranteed an opportunity for a huge tax cut, the likes of which we haven't seen in more than a decade. We can't afford it. We know that it is wrong, and yet the Republicans persist in doing so. The victory on the Graham Amendment, I think, was a clear indication that even a lot of Republicans are very concerned about what implications there are for a tax cut of the magnitude of the contract in America. And while that was a real defeat for the contract, there still is a tax cut of some magnitude. We will have a vote this morning on whether or not we can build firewalls to protect the middle class, whether or not we can ensure that what limited tax relief there could be dedicated to the middle class. That's what this vote's all about. If the Republicans want to protect the wealthy, they'll have an opportunity to do so once more as they vote on the Boxer Amendment. If they want to do what we all say we need to do, which is to provide tax relief to those people who need it the most, then they'll vote for the Boxer Amendment. If that fails, we will offer then the Feingold Amendment, which would dedicate it to complete deficit reduction and not have a tax cut at all. Simply give it up, recognize that we could accelerate our deficit reduction a lot more successfully if we dedicated the entire pool of resources to deficit reduction instead of a tax cut. So once again, the Republicans will have an opportunity to improve this disastrous budget resolution this afternoon. Obviously, this is just the first installment. We will come back with a conference report, and obviously in that deliberation we'll have more opportunities to raise many of the concerns we've raised on the budget floor, or on the Senate floor. But I must say, if you combine what the Republicans are doing in the Senate with what we know they've already done in the House, this situation can only get worse. And it's with some specificity that they're going to have to lay out how much worse during the reconciliation process. I think it's going to be an extraordinarily important debate about priorities, about the direction we take investment in this country, about how we handle fiscal policy, not for just 1 year, but 7 years. We have said, and I think this is so important to emphasize, we've said from the beginning that this is not a debate about if we balance the budget. It's not a debate about when we balance the budget. It's a debate about what priorities and what means by which we invest over the course of the next 7 years. What will be the investments that this country makes in its children, in its people, and in those areas of spending that deserve the kind of attention and priority that we've articulated over the last several days. So that's how we see the end of the budget debate. I think the Democrats will be virtually unanimous in opposition to the budget resolution as it is laid before us. The Republicans have not only rejected the amendments, but have actually played games in the way the amendments are allowed to come to the floor. We're disappointed that we have not had more of an opportunity to lay out these amendments. They can play these procedural and parliamentary games, and they may win the battle, but in the long run, this country suffers as a result of not having had the opportunity to see a good debate about many of these questions. But as it relates to Medicare, as it relates to education, as it relates to taxing working families, I think the American people are beginning to understand that the Republican budget is a disaster, and it has to be changed before these people are actually victimized as a result of what the Republicans have proposed, all in the name of a budget cut for the wealthy that we can't afford, that we ought not spend, that really has no place as we truly consider our goal of a deficit reduction target of the year 2002. So with that, let me take your questions.
Boxer amendment, didn't the budget committee already adopt that? Isn't that already in the budget resolution?
The budget, it was a sense of the Senate resolution in the budget committee. This is actual law. This would say that we are going to build a firewall to ensure that that all the benefits go to those with incomes of less than $100,000. I think that's the right approach. I think it says if you have a limited amount of money for tax cuts, it ought to go to those people who need it the most. And so it'll be a real opportunity, I think, for Democrats and Republicans to express themselves on where this tax cut ought to go. If the Republicans vote against the Boxer Amendment, it's a lock-solid guarantee that at least 12% of the population will get 50% of the benefits. The wealthiest will get the most. And that's exactly the Republican approach to most tax policy as long as I've been in the Senate.
Senator, there's a group of Democrats who are going to present a balanced budget alternative this morning. Have they kept you informed of what they're doing? And if so, can you comment on their efforts and whether you plan to vote for them?
I plan to vote for it. I applaud their efforts. They have kept me completely informed as they've continued their deliberations. There are at least a dozen senators that are participating in this effort, and I think it's terrific. I am unabashedly supportive of their effort, and I would hope that we could generate a good deal of support. But they're getting into a risky area, and let's face it, you're going to hear the Republicans charge that this is a tax increase. But keep in mind, what they're suggesting is that we close some of the tax loopholes in this country and hold harmless anybody with incomes below $140,000. So we're closing tax loopholes for those people with incomes over $140,000. Now, if we can't do that, I don't think Republicans are really serious about spreading the pain, spreading the sacrifice. That's what we're talking about here. Does everybody have to give some in order to achieve a meaningful deficit reduction package by the year 2002? Absolutely. But you ask the Republicans today, what is it the wealthy are giving? What is it they're contributing to this process? Show us what it is they're doing to ensure that we are successful. It's just the opposite. What the Republicans are proposing is that not only do we not ask them to give, we're going to give back. A huge tax cut worth hundreds of thousands of dollars in some cases over the course of 7 years to the wealthiest in this country. Well, they defeated the House-passed tax cut. But I will guarantee you two things. The $170 billion in the Senate resolution will go to a tax cut. And secondly, it'll be a lot more than that when it comes out of conference, because you combine what the House is doing and what the Senate is doing, and that number is guaranteed to go up. So what the Republicans are saying is that we're not going to ask the wealthy to give anything here. And keep in mind, we're not anti-wealthy. The President said last night, we created more millionaires in the last 2 years than any 2 years in recent history, if not in all of history. We've created more small businesses in the last 2 years. We want businesses to grow. We want to create more millionaires, but we also want to create more middle class. We want to take people in the lower class and economic scales and raise them out of poverty. And that's really, in large part, what we're trying to do with this budget resolution. And so it's a clear choice. And I can't emphasize how strongly many of us feel about the need for participation in this process of sacrifice and ultimate deficit reduction to the point where we have no deficit.
Senator, one mechanical question. What time do you think the vote on final passage will be this afternoon?
Well, I must say, we are deeply disappointed that we have not been able to offer and debate many of our amendments, but we will say that without question we're going to demand a roll call on every one. And so however long that takes, we're going to ensure that everybody can be heard and that everyone will have a chance to vote on issues that they feel to be very important in this process. So I can't really predict when that vote will occur. As you know, there are 4 hours of debate left on the resolution itself, not including votes on the amendments. So I suspect that it's going to be a long day. If I had to guess, it'll probably be sometime late afternoon.
Senator, with the President going to weigh in both with budget suggestions and with vetoes of appropriations and tax bills, in your crystal ball, how do you think it will play out when the session ends at the end of this year?
Well,
The shape of budget and spending and projections for balanced budget.
Well, of course, the Republicans can have their say virtually completely when it comes to the budget resolution because it's an internal document, but they can't when it comes to reconciliation. If they want us to come to the table, I think the President has been very clear. We've got to address this tax cut question. We have to address Medicare, education, and taxing working families. That's our price for coming to the table. If they want to have a standoff, if they want to polarize this debate, if they want to do it all by themselves, I think they're going to be hard-pressed to produce results the American people will come to expect. So somewhere between now and then, I think we're going to be forced to come together and work this thing through, but not until they are willing to accept the fact that there is a price to be paid here for Democrats' participation. The President's laid it out, we've reiterated it, and I think it's a matter of time before they accept it.
What will be the tax cut and when all this plays out at the end of the year?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not prepared today to predict what, if any, kind of a tax cut we'll have. I personally would defer a tax cut until we can be assured of more meaningful deficit reduction. But if there is one, it has to be targeted, has to be paid for, and I predict at least that will be done by the end of the year if we get to that point.
How about the measure of 2002?
Well, I personally believe that 2002 is doable. We voted for that. We ought to hold ourselves to it. We can do it. If the date slips to accommodate taking Social Security off the table, as our Democrats propose in their alternative, I think that's terrific. But unless we do that, I think we've got to hold everyone's feet to the fire and keep that year 2002 as the viable date.
The rescission package, what's the schedule in terms of a final vote or in terms of coming to the floor, and how quickly do you think the President will veto the package when it goes through the Senate?
Well, we're going to be voting on the rescission package perhaps as early as today, and let me say there is virtual unanimity in opposition to the conference report as it's passed out. What we have said to the Republicans is that there's still time. We don't have to vote on it this afternoon. There are ways with which to continue to work this thing through. I believe that there's a possibility it will still be adjusted to accommodate some of the concerns that we've expressed. This is a no-win deal for the Republicans. They lose on the issue, and I believe they lose on the politics. Let them explain why Oklahoma and California will not get the assistance that they need. We can avoid that. We can come to the table and agree if we can restore the investments in education. We have no disagreement whatsoever on the $16 billion rescission goal. That's something we're prepared to support. But it has to be with a recognition that the investments we make in education has to be back on the table. If that is accommodated, we could have a breakthrough sometime yet this week.
Are there negotiations
Yes.
right now? So there's talk.
That's right.
You would reopen the conference report.
We sure would. Be prepared to do it as early as this afternoon.
How many amendments, Democratic amendments, are left for the budget resolution?
I don't know how many. I would guess at least 20. So
At least 20 roll calls.
That's right.
None of them are going to disagree.
no, not because some of them may. I don't want to speak for each sponsor, but I'm going to encourage them to have a roll call vote.
20 roll calls today?
Absolutely.
You think we'll get to a vote this afternoon if we go through 20 roll calls?
Well, that's up to the majority leader.
Next rescission?
Plus rescission. Could be a long day. No, I'm disappointed, frankly, and you've seen the game that's being played there, and I frankly think that we've got to be able to debate resolutions in good faith here and accommodate people on both sides. That's not been done, and I'm getting more and more frustrated with the kind of domineering, dogmatic approach to process here that was represented during this budget debate. That's wrong. We ought to be more accommodating, and you know, both sides can play the game. We don't want to do that. It's not a game because these are very important issues. They have to be addressed. We want to be heard. Let's have a short debate, 10 minutes on a side on some of these amendments. But as you know, they're buying down the time. They're drawing it down so as to avoid debates on some of these tough issues, and that's their right, but they're not going to avoid a vote.
You said that you heartily endorse Conrad's alternative. Does that mean that it represents the leadership's vision of what should be done regarding deficit reduction this year?
I don't want to speak for the leadership in this regard because we've not taken, the leadership has laid out what our strategy was going to be, which was the series of amendments that we felt identified exactly where our priorities are. I personally believe that what the alternative represents is a good faith effort to do what a lot of Democrats in our caucus feel strongly about the need to do. So it's a real positive contribution to this debate, and I want to be as supportive as I can, not necessarily as the leader, but certainly as a senator who feels that Senator Conrad and those who have proposed this resolution or this amendment have done so with a realization that Democrats have to do have to contribute to this process, and they're doing so.
Is it your personal? Does it represent your personal view of what needs to be done with deficit reduction this year?
Yes.
And how do you go about it?
Well, I haven't been involved in the. I won't say that it addresses all of my specific concerns and approaches, but I think generically and just generally, we've got to put everything on the table. And that includes tax loopholes, tax expenditures. It includes entitlement reform. It includes discretionary spending. And that's really what the Conrad approach is suggesting here. Let's put everything on the table. Why hold harmless $450 billion of tax expenditures? Why not make everybody a part of the process? And that's what he's suggesting. Again, let me emphasize, that is not a caucus position. It's Tom Daschle's position, but I think it's shared by a lot of members in our caucus.
I'm confused about why not try and make it a caucus position, or why not try and develop it? This is not it, a caucus position on a balanced budget. We have,
and that's what I really believe that
a unified position where you do what Conrad is doing and say, here is a plan. This is the Democratic plan to achieve a balanced budget by 2004, 2002. I mean, Conrad, I think it's 2004. Why not do that?
Because we have done that. And the only thing we've done is to offer what we would have otherwise done in a comprehensive amendment sequentially. We've addressed Medicare, we've addressed education, we've addressed the tax increases, we've addressed how you deal with the tax decrease, the tax cut that they're proposing. We've addressed a whole range of issues in a sequential array of amendments that in total is our alternative.
Why not bundle them so we can see what the Democratic position is?
Well, you can bundle them if you wish, because that really does identify what it is we're attempting to do here. Senator Conrad has chosen to bundle them, and as I say, it's a good faith effort. It's another way to do it. But if you look at the Conrad amendment and what we have done as a caucus, it's virtually identical. The only significant difference is, of course, the issue of tax expenditures. I got to get on the floor.
One slightly broader question. How much of a multi-dimensional chess game are we seeing? We've got the partisan politics on one hand, but how much is Republican presidential politics playing into this?
Well, I think the Graham Amendment was a pure illustration of presidential politics at its most obvious. And we'll see a lot more of that, not only on the budget debates, but other issues that come before the Senate. It's becoming more of an open contest, and I think that the first Republican primary is played out daily on the Senate floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Okay. Procedurally, can you amend the conference report?
Well, the House can take it up again. They can take up our version, so you would address it and send it over to us.
Will these be 20-minute votes, or would you accept 10-minute votes?
We'll accept 10-minute votes.
Thank you very much.